Welcome to the Deep Dive. And for this, episode 15 of the Boardroom Masterclass, we're really getting into something fundamental. What makes a great leader? I mean, truly great. And how do we build organizations where people, don't just work, but actually flourish? Our deep dive today, it's really inspired by some profound insights, especially from Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last. And our mission really is to pull out practical, usable truths to help you build environments where people feel safe, they trust each other, and well, they achieve amazing things together.
Yeah, and it's such a critical topic for any organization that wants, real sustained success. In the Boardroom Masterclass, we see it again and again. The companies that make it long-term, the ones that navigate the tough times, they're led by people who get that how you treat your people isn't some soft skill side note. It's absolutely core. We're going to explore why this human connection thing, it's not just nice, it's necessary for survival, for growth.
Okay, so where do we start unpacking this? Sinek's main idea, his core premise, is that real leaders, they put their people first. They're the ones stepping into the unknown, maybe into danger, to protect the team, setting their own interests aside for the collective, for what is ours. It reminds me of that John Quincy Adams quote, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. It's really about that inspiration, isn't it? Lifting others up.
Exactly. And this whole people first thing, it's not just the ethical thing to do. It's actually the foundation for long-term survival for the organization. Companies where people feel genuinely valued, where they share a purpose, well, they build resilience, they weather storms. Without that, sure, you might get some short-term wins on paper, but those internal cracks, they will show up eventually. When it becomes about individual survival, not collective well-being, well, you get infighting, not success.
So how do leaders actually create that feeling, that security? Sinek talks about the circle of safety. Explain that a bit. It's the leader's job, right, to reduce the internal threats. Things like office politics, fear, maybe unhealthy competition between colleagues.
Precisely. When you minimize those internal anxieties, people can stop watching their backs inside the organization, and they can focus all that energy outwards on the real threats, the competitors, the challenges, the opportunities.
Right, like that old fable, Aesop's fable, the four oxen and the lion. When they stood together, facing out, they were safe. But when they argued and faced inwards, divided, they were picked off one by one.
That's a perfect analogy. Or think about the Spartans. They carried those heavy shields, yes, for themselves, but the discipline was about protecting the person next to them. It was for the safety of the whole line. That collective protection is what gives the group its real strength.
And you're saying this isn't just a nice idea, it's actually biological.
It is. It's fascinating. There are chemicals involved. Serotonin, for instance, that's often called the leadership chemical. It gives us feelings of pride, respect, confidence. It reinforces that bond between the leader and the team, the feeling of status that comes from being valued by the group. And then there's oxytocin. That's the chemical for love, trust, friendship. It makes us feel like we belong, like we're safe with these people. It drives cooperation.
Oh, okay.
So when leaders genuinely build that circle of safety, these chemicals, serotonin and oxytocin, they start flowing. Stress levels go down, feelings of fulfillment go up, and people become incredibly willing to cooperate to serve each other and the organization's goals.
Wow. You can really see that in action in stories like Johnny Bravo, the A-10 pilot in Afghanistan.
Oh, that's a powerful one. Tell us about it.
Right. So he's flying high above these really thick clouds, can't see the ground, but he picks up on the radio chatter from the troops below. He senses this anxiety in their voices. And without anyone ordering him to, he decides to do this incredibly risky maneuver, a weather letdown. He basically drops his plane down through the clouds into this dangerous valley just to see what's going on, to be there for them.
Even without orders, knowing the risk.
Exactly. And his core belief, he said later, wasn't his tech or his training, though obviously those were important. He called empathy his single greatest asset. He felt what they were feeling. He risked everything, flying low passes, because he understood, and I'm quoting him here loosely, empathy is a second-by-second, minute-by-minute service. We owe to everyone if we want to call ourselves a leader.
That just gives you chills. It's such a clear example of taking responsibility for your people's well-being. And that act, driven by empathy, creates the conditions where, like you said, people will gladly give everything they have to protect each other and the mission. You just don't get that level of commitment, that deep trust, unless people feel fundamentally cared for and safe.
And it's not just in these life-or-death military situations, right? I mean, think about Bob Chapman at that Hasten Sandy Ecker factory he bought.
Right, the manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
What was the culture like there?
Oh, it was stark. Bells telling people when to take breaks, time clocks everyone had to punch. Office staff treated way differently than the factory floor workers. Factory folks even needed permission to use a payphone. It was work felt like work.
Very hierarchical. Command and control.
Totally. But Chapman, he started listening. And this one guy, Ron Campbell, who'd been there almost 30 years, he hesitantly told Chapman something profound. He said, "You trust me a lot more when you can't see me than when I'm right here." Meaning, he had more autonomy out on a customer site than inside his own factory walls.
Wow. That must have hit home.
It did. Chapman really hurt him. And he made practical changes. He got rid of the payphones, made company phones available to everyone. He allowed people to move freely around the plant. He started treating everyone the same, office or factory. Simple stuff, really.
But deeply symbolic.
Yeah.
Chapman understood, didn't he, that to earn trust, you have to extend trust first. You have to treat people, like adults you believe in. He basically bet on their inherent goodness.
And what happened?
The results were incredible. Theft almost disappeared. People started taking better care of the machines like they were their own. And get this, revenue jumped from $55 million to $95 million with no debt, no fancy consultants. Just by changing how people were treated, it shifted, as Sinek puts it, from working with a sense of obligation to working with a sense of pride. People stopped coming to work just for the company and started coming to work for each other.
That's a huge shift. And it led Chapman to this really moving moment, didn't it, at a wedding?
Yeah, tell that part. It's so human.
He was watching the father of the bride give his daughter away, entrusting her to her new husband. And it suddenly clicked for him. He realized every single employee is someone's son or someone's daughter. It completely reframed his job. It wasn't just managing resources anymore. It was like a kind of parental care, protecting precious lives, not just numbers on a spreadsheet.
That parental care analogy is powerful. It highlights the deep responsibility.
But unfortunately, that connection, that sense of responsibility, it often gets lost, doesn't it? Especially as companies get bigger, we start dehumanizing.
Yeah, that's a real danger. Abstraction.
Sinek uses that chilling quote from Joseph Stalin. "The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of a million is a statistic." End quote. And you feel that difference, don't you? A single local accident, it hits you hard. But hearing about thousands dying far away, it feels more abstract, even though the scale of suffering is immense.
And that's the problem with relying solely on numbers to represent people. When leaders are too far removed, just looking at spreadsheets, dashboards, their ability to really feel the human impact of their decisions, it gets blunted. It's not always intentional malice, it's the distance. The abstraction makes empathy really, really difficult.
Which brings us to something really unsettling, the Milgram experiment. Can you remind us what that was about?
Sure. Stanley Milgram's experiment back in the 60s. You had a teacher, the real participant, told by an authority figure in a lab coat to give electric shocks to a student who was actually an actor for wrong answers. The shocks increased in intensity, supposedly up to lethal levels.
And the results were just horrifying.
They were. The most disturbing finding was that when the teacher couldn't see or hear the student being shocked, about 65% of them went all the way to the maximum voltage. They obeyed authority even when they thought they were inflicting extreme pain, possibly death, just because they couldn't directly perceive the consequences.
65%, that's staggering. And the implication for business.
It's chilling. Sinek draws a direct line. When we cannot see the impact of our decisions, when the lives of people become an abstraction, 65% of us have the capacity to kill someone. Now, obviously not literally in most business contexts, but the principle holds. Fear of getting fired, of displeasing the boss, that could override our moral judgment when we're disconnected from the human cost.
And this tendency, this disconnect, it was arguably amplified by that whole shareholder primacy idea, wasn't it? Milton Friedman's concept.
Absolutely. The idea that the only social responsibility of business is to increase profits for shareholders, that really took hold in the 80s and 90s, and it directly fueled short-term thinking. Layoffs suddenly became not a last resort, but a routine strategy to boost quarterly numbers. You see the cultural shifts Sinek describes, like at Goldman Sachs pre- and post-going public, or comparing Jack Welch's GE with, say, Jim Sinegal's Costco, which always prioritized employees.
Right.
And look at disasters like the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill. That was a direct consequence, Sinek argues, of relentlessly prioritizing cost-cutting and schedules over safety concerns raised by people on the ground. The short-term savings led to a catastrophe that cost vastly more in the long run, financially and environmentally, and damaged the whole industry's reputation. The abstraction had devastating real-world consequences.
And the costs aren't just financial or environmental disasters. There are serious health consequences too, right? From bad leadership and toxic cultures.
Oh, definitely. The Whitehall Studies in Britain are landmark research here. They studied British civil servants over decades, and they found, quite counterintuitively at the time, that it wasn't the high-powered execs with lots of responsibility who had the most stress and worst health outcomes. It was the people lower down the hierarchy. The less control they had over their work, the more stress they experienced, and the higher their rates of heart disease, stress-related illnesses, and even early death.
So it's about autonomy, feeling like you have some say, not just the workload itself.
Exactly. Control matters immensely. And there was another study, I think, from Boston College that found something really sobering for parents. It showed that the mood you bring home from work actually affects your children's well-being more than the sheer number of hours you work.
Wow.
Yeah, the implication Sinek draws is stark. If you don't like your work for your kids' sake, don't go home. Or rather, fix your work situation. Because that negative energy, that stress, it spills over. A bad work environment hurts families too.
Okay, so we've seen the problems, abstraction, short-term thinking, the human cost. Let's pivot now. How do we build cultures that fight these trends? Let's get practical. What are the actionable things leaders, and really all of us, can do?
Right. Let's focus on the positive steps. The first practical tip Sinek emphasizes is crucial in our digital age. Keep it real. Bring people together. Rule number 1. Look, the internet, social media, email, they're amazing tools for transmitting information. But they don't build deep, trusting relationships. That feeling of connection online, often it's more like virtual trust. It feels good, it gives you a dopamine hit, but it's not the same as the real thing. It often doesn't hold up under pressure.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's why people still fly across the country for conferences like Blog World, right?
Oh.
Even though they could just interact online. Or why seeing your favorite band live feels totally different from watching a perfectly produced DVD of the concert. There's an energy, a connection.
Exactly. We're social animals. Nothing replaces face-to-face interaction for building genuine bonds. We need that physical presence, those subtle cues, to really connect and feel like we belong, to build that oxytocin.
And doesn't this tie into Dunbar's number? The idea that we can only really maintain a certain number of close relationships?
It does. Robin Dunbar suggested humans can only comfortably maintain stable social relationships with about 150 people. And some companies intuitively get this. W.L. Gore and Associates, the makers of Gore-Tex, they famously cap the size of their factories at around 150 people. Why? Because they know that beyond that number, people stop knowing everyone. Cooperation falters, and innovation slows down. Keeping it human scale fosters those strong bonds. 3M's culture of sharing ideas is another example built on trust.
Interesting. So size matters for connection. What's the next practical step?
Tip 2 is about making work meaningful. Meet the people you help. Rule number 3 in the book. Adam Grant did this great study with university fundraisers. Their job was calling alumni asking for donations, often a tough, thankless task.
Yeah, I can imagine. Lots of rejection.
Right. But Grant arranged for one group of fundraisers to briefly meet a student who had received a scholarship funded by their work. Just 5 minutes. The impact was dramatic. That group's motivation soared, and their fundraising performance significantly increased compared to the control group.
Wow, just from a 5-minute meeting.
Yes, because they saw the human impact of their calls. It wasn't just about hitting targets anymore. It was about helping that specific student. Seeing the tangible result of our work is incredibly motivating. Think about Wells Fargo loan officers who got a boost meeting customers whose lives they changed, or radiologists who became more accurate when they saw photos of the patients whose scans they were reading.
It connects the effort to a person.
Precisely. Yet so many leaders seem to miss this. They think just telling people their work matters is enough. It's not. Show them. Organizations like Charity, Water, get this right. They send donors GPS coordinates and photos of the actual wells built with their money. It makes the impact real, tangible, human.
Okay, so bring people together physically and connect them to the human impact of their work. What else?
Tip 3. Give time and energy, not just money. Rule 4. This one's subtle but powerful. Think about value. Money is relative, right? $100 means one thing to a billionaire, another thing entirely to someone struggling.
Sure.
But time and energy, those are finite, non-redeemable commodities. We all get 24 hours in a day. When someone, especially a leader, gives you their focused time, their personal energy to help you, that feels incredibly valuable, much more so than just a bonus.
So showing up, mentoring, listening, that carries more weight than just throwing money at problems.
Absolutely. Loyalty, a real commitment in organizations, it isn't primarily bought with salaries and perks. Those matter. But deep loyalty is earned. It's earned when leaders genuinely sacrifice their time and energy for their people. That signals care. It builds trust. It releases those positive chemicals we talked about, oxytocin, serotonin. It creates this upward spiral where people feel valued and are then inspired to give more of their own time and energy back. Because ultimately, business is a human enterprise. It's about the people.
Okay, that makes sense. Giving time is a real investment. Which leads maybe to the next point, patience. Tip 4. Be patient. The rule of 7 days and 7 years. Rule 5.
Yes, this is so important. We know this instinctively in our personal lives. Imagine telling a friend you went on an amazing first date last Tuesday and you're getting married tomorrow. They'd think you were crazy, right?
Yeah, definitely raise an eyebrow or two.
Because we understand that real trust, real love, deep relationships, they take time to build. Consistency, shared experiences, it's not instant. That initial buzz after a great job interview or a successful first project meeting, that's often dopamine. It's excitement, novelty. It's not the same as deep, stable trust built over time.
So building a strong culture, a truly safe team, it's a long game. No quick fixes, no magic bullet program.
Exactly. It requires sustained effort, consistent behavior from leaders day in and day out. Patience is key.
And speaking of consistency and behavior, that ties right into the next leadership lesson. Integrity matters. Lesson 3.
Critically important. It's the foundation of trust.
Sinek tells that story from the Marine Corps Officer Candidate School, the foxhole test, remember that. A candidate falls asleep on watch, a serious offense. He lies about it when confronted. He gets kicked out of the program. Not just for sleeping, but for the lie.
Right. Because in combat, your buddy needs to know, absolutely, that you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
That they can trust your word with their life.
But then another candidate makes the same mistake, falls asleep. But when confronted, he immediately admits it, takes responsibility, he gets punished, sure, maybe he has to do extra drills or something, but his character isn't questioned, he stays in the program.
Yeah.
Because he showed integrity.
It's a stark illustration. Integrity means telling the truth. Good news, bad news, uncomfortable news. Leaders have to be straight with their people for them to feel safe. And integrity isn't just like a value you list on a wall. It's a practice. It's consistently aligning what you say and what you do with your intentions, day after day.
Yeah, like that example of Bank of America trying to spin why they dropped that unpopular debit card fee rather than just admitting customers hated it. They lost trust by not being straight.
Exactly. Honesty, even when it's tough, builds trust. Dishonesty, spin.
Right.
It destroys it instantly.
Okay, so integrity is fundamental. Let's talk about relationships again. Another point Sinek makes is that friends matter, even at work, and also the power of shared struggle.
Right. These are closely related to building those bonds.
He points to the decline of cooperation in the U.S. Congress as an example. Back in the day, politicians from different parties used to socialize more. Their families knew each other. They built relationships outside of the political arena.
Yeah, there were bipartisan friendships like George McGovern and Bob Dole, despite huge political differences, or Stephanie Herseth-Sandlin and Bob Goodlatte more recently. They could still work together because they saw each other as human beings first.
But then changes happen, right? Like under Newt Gingrich in the 90s. Actively discouraging socializing across the aisle, pushing members to spend more time back in their district's fundraising, less time building connections in D.C.
Exactly. It fostered more of an us versus them win-at-all-costs mentality. Less relationship building, less trust, less cooperation. Getting together out of context is really important for breaking down barriers.
And that connects to shared struggle, doesn't it? Think about your own experiences. Often, the best days at work, the times you felt closest to your colleagues, were when you overcame some big challenge together.
Absolutely. Pushing through a tough deadline, solving a complex problem, navigating a crisis. That shared effort, that overcoming adversity side by side, it builds incredible camaraderie. It floods your system with oxytocin.
So, what does this mean for leaders when things are actually going well? When there isn't an obvious crisis?
That's a great question. Sinek suggests that in times of abundance, leaders need to almost artificially reframe hardship. Instead of just focusing on hitting the next sales target, they need to articulate a bigger, more inspiring vision, a challenge that outsizes the resources currently available.
Like Bill Gates' early vision of a PC on every desk? That seemed impossible at the time.
Exactly. A goal like that forces people to innovate, to collaborate, to pull together, to achieve something meaningful, something bigger than themselves. It creates a positive shared struggle toward a compelling purpose.
Okay, so these are ways to build strong cultures. But let's touch on some modern roadblocks. Sinek talks about destructive abundance. What's that?
It's the idea that when we have too much of something readily available, we tend to value it less, maybe even waste it. Think cheap calories, easy credit. And sadly, Sinek argues, this can apply to human connection in our hyper-connected world. It also relates to dopamine.
Ah, the dopamine addiction he describes. Explain that connection.
Well, dopamine is the chemical of reward and motivation. Ancestrally, it rewarded us for effort finding food, building shelter. It was tied to progress and survival. But today, our environment is saturated with easy dopamine hits. The ding of an email, a social media notification, the quick win in a game. We get these constant, small, instant gratification bursts. This can short-circuit our natural reward system. We start craving the instant hit over the sustained effort. Sinek suggests this contributes to widespread impatience, maybe even the rise in ADHD diagnoses. Could it be partly an addiction to distraction?
You see that impatience perhaps reflected in how some younger generations approach things. Sinek mentions Generation Y and maybe a tendency towards symbolic gestures.
Yeah, he touches on that. Things like sharing the Cooney video or buying a one-face watch. These actions feel good, they signal virtue, they provide a quick sense of having done something. But sometimes, he argues, there's a focus on the desired outcome stopping Cooney, providing water without fully appreciating the long, difficult, often unglamorous journey required to actually achieve it. The hard work, the sustained commitment.
It's the difference between clicking like and actually putting in the years of effort.
Exactly. And how do we break these cycles, whether it's addiction to numbers, performance metrics, or even digital distraction? Sinek finds a powerful answer in Alcoholics Anonymous.
AA, how does that apply to leadership?
Look at step 12 of AA. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. The key to maintaining sobriety is helping another alcoholic. It's service. Applying this to organizations, the antidote to being addicted to destructive metrics or short-term thinking is service. Service to the real, living, breathing human beings we work with every day, focusing on their growth, their well-being.
And that service, that connection, it has to be real, right? Not virtual.
Absolutely. AA meetings are in person. Sponsors are available by phone, a direct human connection. Because the bonds required to overcome deep challenges, addictions, they have to be real. AA, Sinek says, creates a perfectly formed circle of safety. Support, accountability, shared struggle, service, it's all there.
It really brings it full circle, doesn't it? Back to human connection. Sinek reminds us, we can put up with a great many hardships when we have a partner to help see us through.
That stress chemical, cortisol, it loses its power when we feel connected, supported, safe with our tribe.
Exactly. Having someone you trust beside you literally changes your body's chemistry in stressful situations.
So let's try to wrap this up for today's deep dive in the Boardroom Masterclass. What are the core takeaways? It seems true leadership, the kind that builds organizations that last and where people thrive, it really boils down to creating that circle of safety.
Yeah, and that means actively prioritizing your people, extending trust first, making time for real human face-to-face connection, not relying just on digital communication.
Leading with absolute integrity, telling the truth, always, and framing challenges in a way that inspires people to work together for a purpose bigger than themselves.
And it means giving your time and energy, which are often more valuable than money, and being patient. Understanding that building real trust, a strong culture, it takes time and consistent effort. It's fundamentally about treating people like people, understanding our biological need for connection and safety.
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, something provocative to consider. Sinek warns, if good people are asked to work in a bad culture, one in which leaders do not relinquish control, then the odds of something bad happening go up. Think about that. It puts the responsibility not just on those with formal titles, but on everyone. Are you contributing to a circle of safety where you work? Are you extending trust? Are you helping build those connections? Because building and maintaining that environment, that shared responsibility, it's absolutely critical for success, for innovation, and just for human well-being.